Opportunity to speak to Parliament today at a critical time, both for Ethiopians and for the EU's relationship with Ethiopia. On October 2nd, in Bishoftu, Ethiopia, an unknown number of people, possibly hundreds, died during a stampede after security forces used tear gas and gunfire to control a tense crowd at the annual Erecha festival. Erecha is an important cultural event for the Oromo ethnic group and draws millions of people each year to Bishoftu. The deaths have exacerbated pre-existing anger and frustrations throughout Oromia. Since that terrible day, there have been more anti-government protests and destruction of government buildings and private properties of those who are deemed to be close to the regime. On Sunday, October 9th, Ethiopia's Prime Minister declared a 6-month state of emergency. Now, crucially, the tragic events at Erecha came after 11 months of anti-government protests in many parts of Oromia. Protesters initially were concerned that a proposed new master plan for the capital, Addis Ababa, would lead to further displacement of Oromo farmers, something that had happened with regularity in previous years, and something that has also happened in different parts of Ethiopia. Now, by the time the government announced the cancellation of the master plan in January, protester grievances had expanded to include condemnation of the brutality of the security force response to the largely peaceful protests, as well as decades of marginalization and human rights violations of the Oromo people. Now, the scale of this crackdown is difficult to overstate. Most people I spoke to told me the lengthy list of families and friends who had been killed, who had been arrested, and who had been disappeared. In July, large protests also occurred in the Amhara region over complex questions of ethnic identity and the dominance in economic political affairs of those with ties to the ruling party. The government's brutality continued. In August, in Amhara and Oromia regions, security forces killed over 100 people in one bloody weekend. Now, as the protests have unfolded, Human Rights Watch has interviewed several hundred individuals from more than 80 locations in Ethiopia. We were able to document how security forces have used excessive and unnecessary lethal force and killed at least 500 protesters, detained tens of thousands, many of whom were detained without charge. Released detainees told us of widespread mistreatment and torture, and the killings and the torture, a lot of which was at the hands of the military, and is that same military who is now being tasked with restoring law and order under the state of emergency. In short, Ethiopia is in the midst of its worst political and human rights crisis since the government took power in 1991. Urgent action is needed before the crisis further deteriorates. While Ethiopian people bravely demand their human rights, concerned intergovernmental bodies and governments should press the Ethiopian government to respect basic rights and hold accountable those who violate them. And the EU should be leading the way on this. Now, the recent events did not happen overnight. They were a long time in the making. They are the outcome of the government's systematic and calculated suppression of fundamental rights and freedoms that have closed political space and left few opportunities for the peaceful expression of dissent. Ethiopia is among Africa's leading jailer of journalists. There is little space for them to operate. Journalists and bloggers must choose between self-censorship, harassment, arrest, or living in exile. Websites critical of the government are blocked. Radio stations are regularly jammed during sensitive times. And those providing information to journalists or to human rights organizations are often targeted for arrest. At various times in the last 3 months, the government has blocked the internet completely in some locations, restricted access to social media, and jammed radio transmissions, including German broadcaster Deutsche Welle. Bloggers have been arrested, and international journalists continue to report restrictions on access to the country. As we speak, the government is blocking access to internet in many parts of Oromia. Independent civil society groups face similar overwhelming obstructions. In 2009, the government passed the Charities and Societies Proclamation, which severely curtailed the ability of NGOs to work in areas of good governance and human rights. The anti-terrorism law, passed in 2009, has been used to crack down on peaceful expressions of dissent, many opposition politicians, journalists, and activists have been convicted under that law and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Courts have shown little independence in politically charged trials. There have also been serious restrictions on opposition political parties, which led to the ruling coalition in the May 2015 elections, winning 100% of seats in the federal and regional parliaments, despite the evident anti-government feelings in much of the country. In 2010, the previous election, they won 99.6% of the seats. The authorities also restrict public protests with routine denial of permits and arrests of real or perceived protest organizers. Fear of opposing the government has historically kept people from protesting, but that fear is rapidly dissipating. It's been very evident to me over the years I've been doing interviews, particularly amongst the youth, how that fear is rapidly disappearing. For those who do take to the streets, as thousands have done in hundreds of locations over the last year, brutal force from security forces is too often the response. So what avenues does this leave to express dissent, to question government policies, or to voice concern over abusive practices? There's very little space for that. The ruling party has dealt swiftly and aggressively with anyone who challenges the government narrative. For example, in March 2015, Pastor Omat Agua was arrested in Addis Ababa with 6 other colleagues after trying to attend a food security workshop in Nairobi. 4 of them were released, but Pastor Omat and 2 other colleagues were charged with terrorism, accused of belonging to a long, inactive, armed opposition group. Several months earlier, he had been the translator for the World Bank Inspection Panel complaint into the villagization program in Western Ethiopia's Gambela region. Human Rights Watch and others documented how the villagization program was associated with forced displacement of indigenous people, leading to worsening food insecurity and several thousand people fleeing Ethiopia into neighboring countries. The program was funded, albeit indirectly, through the World Bank, the EU, and others. While it's impossible to say whether the charges against him are linked to his role as translator, his case is typical of those who attempt to question the government's policies, particularly on sensitive topics like development. I carry out so many interviews with people who were arrested, beaten up, or tortured solely because they challenged the government's development narrative. And that includes development workers, journalists, teachers, government workers, etc. Human Rights Watch has also documented the Ethiopian government's misuse of development assistance, including some EU funding, by ensuring that only those who are ruling party members or supporters receive the benefits of aid, including access to fertilizers, to seeds, to jobs, and to training opportunities. We first documented this in 2010, and there's little evidence that any action has been taken by the EU to monitor the negative and partisan impact of development assistance to Ethiopia. Concerns over the political capture of aid continue to come up regularly in her research. Now, while EU development assistance makes an invaluable contribution to much-needed poverty eradication efforts in Ethiopia, it also has this unintended side effect of increasing the government's repressive capacity by contributing to the reliance that Ethiopians have on the government for their livelihood and ultimately for their survival, which further decreases the likelihood that they will be able to engage in open discussion with the government. Now, the EU has chosen to employ quiet diplomacy with Ethiopia in response to the dramatic deterioration in the human rights situation that has contributed to the current crisis. Turning a blind eye to the government's repressive actions is undermining the EU's priorities in the Horn of Africa and putting partnerships at risk, including in the areas of development assistance and migration. While the EU's approach has been counterproductive in dealing with human rights, there have been some positive steps taken. For example, in January, this Parliament passed the strongest resolution in many years on Ethiopia. Many hoped that this would lead to a shift in policy from the EU, but so far that has not happened. We therefore call on you today, in close coordination with your national parliament counterparts, to use every opportunity to press the EU and its member states to take strong and urgent action to try to prevent an irreversible and worsening crisis in Ethiopia. In the content of sweeping abuses of free expression, assembly, and association, the recently announced state of emergency should prompt urgent questions regarding the government's plans for implementation. Under international human rights law, governments need to ensure that any measures to restrict freedom of expression and association are strictly required by the exigencies of the situation and strictly proportionate to the aim pursued. Importantly, emergency powers must never be applied in a discriminatory manner, nor stigmatize people of a particular ethnicity, religion, or social group. Worryingly, the government's announcement indicates that it does not intend to reverse course away from the use of force to deal with what are legitimate grievances. It is exactly that approach of the brutal suppression of the ability to peacefully express dissent that has gotten Ethiopia into the situation it is in today. In the short term, there are three critical actions for the EU. Firstly, the EU should continue to push for an international investigation into the brutal crackdown in Amhara and Oromia regions since November 2015 and the recent deaths at the Erecha festival. The EU statement at the Human Rights Council session in September was a positive first step in pushing for this. The EU should also be pushing for Ethiopia to invite the UN Special Rapporteurs and other special procedures, 11 of whom have outstanding requests for access to the country. Ethiopia has not permitted a single UN Special Rapporteur since 2007, other than the Special Rapporteur on Eritrea. And as everyone knows, Ethiopia is the Vice President of the Human Rights Council. It should be leading by example. Secondly, the EU should publicly call on Ethiopia to release all of those arbitrarily detained during the protests, including opposition leaders like Bekele Gerba. For those who are not familiar with Bekele, he was the deputy chairman for the Oromo Federalist Congress, which is a legally registered opposition party, and a staunch advocate for nonviolent approaches to address Oromo grievances. He was arrested in December 2015, charged under the anti-terrorism law. His trial continues. Being a peaceful and outspoken critic of the current government should not be defined as terrorism. And thirdly, the EU should publicly press for the lifting of government restrictions on the right to freedom of information and expression, including lifting restrictions on the internet and social media, as well as halting the jamming of lawful broadcasts. Thank you.